Hello, this is the third part of the course. In the previous sequences, we talked about the QMS and the quality manual. In this sequence, we are going to look at our two frameworks, which are the basic elements of our TMS. They are the skills framework and the training framework. Our core business is capacity building. It's become almost like an expression. We do capacity building. But what are we talking about? What skills do we need to reinforce? That's the first question to ask because it's the starting point for any training program. So today, we are going to look at what a skills framework is, how it fits into the training management system, what a job description is, and why it's important to use it. This sequence is a 20-minute presentation. If you have any questions after this presentation, you can ask them in the course forum and we'll be happy to answer them. Why this skills framework? When we have a training program, the aim is really to be able to strengthen the skills of the participants, of the target audience. So all the activities proposed in the training must enable the participant to acquire or strengthen one or more skills, skills that will be useful in their day-to-day work. So to draw up a training program, we need to know what skills need to be reinforced during the session. And if we take a step back and look at the training system level, we can draw a parallel. We realize that in order to offer a range of training sessions that will enable the sector to become more professional and the various players to carry out their activities in the best possible way, we must know all the skills that need to be strengthened. It is on the basis of this need for skills that we can define the training to be offered and enable the players to achieve the results expected by the organization and more broadly by the sector. What is a skills framework and how is it built? To find out what skills are needed, we need to look at the activities carried out by the players in the sector, what their responsibilities are, and how they contribute to the running of the organization, whether it's a company, an NPPO, a lab, or a consultancy firm. So how did we go about it? What is our approach? We started by looking at one area. It's difficult to see the horticultural sector as a whole. So we tackled the project by subject, by area, the areas in which COLEAD is involved. So first we defined an area to focus on. In our case, we started with the SPS area, then the business management area. The other areas will be added progressively. What's important to understand here is that we are going to define our skills framework only for the areas in which we operate and only for our target audiences, not for the whole sector. Once we've defined our area, we take a close look at how it works, what activities are linked to that area, and we organize them into processes, exactly as we did for the training department we talked about in the previous sequences. So we are going to identify and define these processes. To do this, we rely on our knowledge of the field, but also on reference systems and standards. For example, in the SPS field, we made reference to ISPM standards, International Standards for Phytosanitary Measures, and the IPPC Convention. And then, once we've thought through these processes, we look at who's involved and which jobs are involved in these processes. Each job will then be defined by its responsibilities and activities. Then, of course, there are skills, what each person needs to carry out these missions and activities, what skills are required to carry out the different responsibilities and activities. Once we have these elements, we can define our job descriptions. We can draw up the job descriptions and then have them validated by the professionals in the sector. All the job descriptions make up our skills framework. And when we go one step further, there are training sessions needed to acquire these skills, which we'll look at in detail in the next sequence. It's this approach that makes our framework so solid. It doesn't come from nowhere. It's based on known and verified elements and on a method that's well thought through. So let's go back to the terminology. We can see that the skills framework is a set of job descriptions that have been written up and validated by professionals, and they include all the skills to be developed and reinforced for each target group and each profession. We talk about skills expressed in terms of knowledge, know-how, meaning operational skills and soft skills, meaning behavior, attitudes. There are different types of skills: technical, managerial, pedagogical, communication and training skills, as well as the ability to adapt to changes in the market or operational context. So in the end, it is this framework that will define the skills required to carry out the tasks and activities as defined in the job descriptions. Now, let's go back to the jobs and see how we defined and identified them. This was a really big part of the work done, and it's interesting to look in more detail at how it came about. Identifying the jobs involves thinking about the processes. So in each process, we really look at who's involved and what their responsibilities are. This is what enables us to identify the jobs involved in the processes. This must be done with precision. Then we selected the jobs or occupations that are our target audiences. Because while the method allows us to identify all the jobs involved in the processes, we are only interested in the jobs that are our target audiences. In other words, those defined by the objectives of the support programs and by COLEAD's governance policy. We won't train everyone, just our target audiences. Once we have identified and listed our target audiences, then we draw up the job descriptions. This is done on the basis of an AST, which is a French abbreviation for Analysis of Work Situation, to mean that we have made an in-depth analysis of the situation of each occupation, which is based on our knowledge of the field, regulations, and standards. Next, it's important to make sure that our definition of occupations is accurate. How? By comparing our job descriptions with reality, so with the people who actually do the jobs. To do this, we carry out surveys, and from this validation process, new occupations or responsibilities that had been forgotten may emerge. To give an example, a similar project is underway with ESSA in Madagascar, which wants to develop a master's degree. The approach has been similar, and on the basis of our job descriptions, the university has identified the profiles of the students who will be involved in this master's degree. Through this work, they have identified a new profession, international relations and negotiation manager. This is just to give an example, and then we'll have to see whether this job is really a job in itself, with specific skills and a level of responsibility that justifies a job description, or whether it's just the responsibility of a job already described. Is how we have identified our jobs. Let's look in a little more detail at how the job descriptions are created. To define the job, we used a template, the job description, which helped us to define each job precisely. The job description is a very useful tool for us, but also for the trainers. It's a tool that helps us to better understand our target audiences, to better understand who they are, to better understand their needs in terms of capacity building. So it's the tool that's going to help us to formalize a training request or to draw up a program. What does the job description contain? It contains the name of the job and other designations. Everyone needs to be able to recognize which job they're talking about. We also explain the context in which the job is carried out in relation to the regulations or standards that apply, but also by looking a little further ahead and anticipating possible developments in the years to come, maybe 3 to 4 years. The purpose of the job is described. That means how the job contributes to the organization's objective. We also specify the place of this job in the organization, its operational situation, so how it fits into the whole organization. Responsibility and autonomy are defined, meaning what the person is responsible for at hierarchical, managerial, or executive level in terms of monitoring. We also indicate the relationships internally but also externally with partners, suppliers, and customers. We are interested in the conditions of access to the job, meaning what qualifications are required to practice this job, the diploma, the professional experience, the continuous training that must be followed. Then we define the main responsibilities that make up the core of the job. We look at the purpose of the job, the responsibilities that a person in this job has to carry out. And for each of them, we look at the activities and, of course, the skills required to carry out the job. Let's look at a concrete example. Afterwards, don't hesitate to explore this sheet by yourself for a better understanding of the tool. If we take the example of the parking manager, the name of this job is parking manager, which is what we have chosen to identify this job. Other names might be head of the parking station, station manager, head of parking, or parkhouse manager. It's possible that through the surveys we carried out among professionals, we added a name so that it will make sense to everyone, and then we listed the tasks. The parking manager has 3 tasks. 1. To organize the flow of products to be packaged in conjunction with the sales department and the harvesting or supply department. 2. To supervise packaging operations. And 3. To manage the station's material and human resources. If we look in a little more detail at task 2, for example, supervising parking operations, we see that there are 3 activities. He has to organize the work of the teams, plan tasks, and manage everyone's working time. He may have to adapt the parking to take account of product variability, that is sizes, fragility of fruits, etc. And then he must implement any action to improve the qualitative and quantitative performance of the parking station. So he must optimize the parkhouse management. To do this, the parking manager needs certain skills. For example, a detailed knowledge of parking operations. He needs to be able to supervise production teams, so he needs to have some training skills, at least in terms of raising awareness. He needs to know the hygiene rules to be observed so that he can enforce them. He needs to be familiar with the quality and traceability standards, etc. In the end, we now have a list of 62 jobs identified and described in job descriptions. These are our 62 target audiences. Here you have an overview of all the jobs, which we have organized by sector: the public sector occupations, in-company occupations, and service provider occupations. This is an extract from a document that forms part of the quality system, in which we explain what the job description is and list all the jobs identified. We can see that each job is organized into hierarchical levels. We have seen that this is an important criterion for defining a job. We have defined 3 levels: the senior management level, the middle management level, and the execution level. For each profession, the responsibilities and activities are well consolidated and validated by professionals. On the other hand, we can discuss the list of skills again. They have been drafted by thinking about what is needed to carry out the activities, but they may need to be adjusted and clarified in relation to our training programs. It's going to be a big job to ensure that everything is consistent between the training programs and the job descriptions. It will happen gradually, and that's why it's so important to start working with these job descriptions and the skills framework now. You can find this document in the course resources. Now let's talk about validating the skills framework. This is also a major stage in the development of the framework. Usually, this is done through face-to-face focus groups with professionals working on the jobs to be validated. In the COVID health context, we work differently and conducted online surveys. We produced survey forms for each job description. We then contacted around 3,000 people to inform them of our approach and invite them to take part. These 3,000 contacts are our beneficiary companies, our contacts in competent authorities, our experts, whether they are beneficiaries or service providers, as well as all the participants in our training sessions. Finally, we had 450 volunteers, half French and half English, who are willing to respond and give their opinion on the various job descriptions. As you can see from the breakdown of respondents, there are many more experts because they were asked to evaluate the public sector job descriptions and the company job descriptions. Finally, in our survey, to give us a few figures, we sent out nearly 5,400 forms and had 1,500 responses, which gives us a response rate of 28%, which is a very good response rate for this type of survey. We asked people about the name of the job, the responsibilities, and the activities. We got a lot of very positive feedback on the process, on the importance of this certification project, and of course on COLEAD, whose support is always much appreciated. To date, we have carried out these surveys for 49 job descriptions, broken down into 24 public service job descriptions, 24 in-company job descriptions, and 1 service provider job description. We are expecting 30 responses per job description. and we already have 22 from the French-speaking side and 8 from the English-speaking side. So we are continuing the survey on the English side, and we hope that in the next few weeks, we'll have enough responses. We'd like to achieve a balance between French and English responses. In terms of the panel, it's split, half French-speaking, half English-speaking. So we really just need to continue the survey a little longer so that professionals from English-speaking countries have time to respond. The initial analysis of the results is positive, with participants generally in agreement with the proposed sheets. Today, all the work I've just described and the method applied is what shows the solidity and credibility of our framework. To sum up, we now have 62 job descriptions. I'd like to make it clear again that this is one sheet per job, even though a job can obviously be involved in a number of different areas. Take the company manager, for example. He may be involved in SPS processes because he needs to know the regulations to be applied in the context of his company's activity. Of course, he is also involved in business management processes. However, there's only one file for the job of company manager. His file is therefore complete. There's not one file for each field, but one file for each job, covering all the tasks and activities of this job. As we said, these sheets are organized by sector and by level of responsibility. We make it clear that the same person in an organization can have several jobs, so we must not confuse the person with the job. We know that in small companies, for example, the head of the company may also be the production and packing manager. In fact, whatever the position or title, if the training is aimed at the person in charge of production, it's the person in the company who carries out the job of a production manager who should attend. We've always worked like this, taking care to ensure that the participants correspond to the target audience for the training. So now we know that our target audiences are our job descriptions. It's an evolving framework. So if one day there's a new job that we need to support, such as plant protection product sellers, we'll follow the same method, defining the responsibilities and activities of the occupations involved in selling products. We'll identify the skills they need, and from there we can build appropriate training programs. In fact, our training management system includes a process dedicated to this activity, drawing up a training plan. Our target audiences are our job descriptions, so we have to learn to think in terms of these job descriptions. The skills framework is a reference tool for gaining a better understanding of capacity building needs and developing training programs. We need to use it to discuss a beneficiary's capacity building needs, and we need to use it to define the learning objectives of a training program. To sum up, our skills framework is our identification of the sector's needs. Our job descriptions are our target audiences, and they are the basis on which we build our training programs. It is all this work that has enabled us to meet the requirements of the standard, which states that any training organization must determine the requirements, meaning the needs and expectations of the interested stakeholders, monitor these requirements, and revise them if necessary. By interested stakeholders, I mean learners and other beneficiaries such as governments, the labor market, companies, and other organizations. To go back to the diagram we saw at the beginning of this sequence and introduce the next sequence, with all the work we've done on our skills framework, we have a complete view of the target audiences, a complete view of the skills that people in the sector need to do their job in the best way possible. And it's based on this needs analysis that we can develop our training offer. That's what we are going to look at in the final section of this course. If you have any questions about this subject, please visit the course forum. We'll be happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you for your attention, and we meet again in the last sequence.